In today's video, what we're going to be doing is diving in to the upcoming pattern. Taking a look at what I think will be the main theme in today's video is the deepening of the cold air. I really suspect that we are in for some brutal cold air, and the Climate Prediction Center is in full agreement. What we're looking at now is the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Very, very cold. We're also going to be taking a look at some snowfall chances. So we have one that primarily looks to aim at the southeast / mid-Atlantic area, and then we do have a couple of threats that would pull up the whole mid-Atlantic and into the northeast. We have seen models flirting with more than one for that southeast mid-Atlantic corridor. Today's video, we're only going to see one of them, I believe, maybe two. But overall, snowstorms look to be a big possibility in this very, very cold pattern, of course. I talked to you guys yesterday about how the deepening of this cold would actually if it pushes further and further east, you're looking at the storm track pushing further and further east. So the more moved in this cold is, the more exclusive the threats are going to be, likely for the more immediate coastal areas. If the heart of it was, let's say, further back here, you'd maybe have storms pulling more inland around that area, and that's where you would start to get more interior threats for snowfall. We've seen a lot more of these kind of coastal threats, though, overall, because the cold has been deeper and further east this year. So again, this is for the 19th through the 23rd. Here is the precipitation outlook, and again, it kind of reflects that. We see the above average precipitation mostly very, very close to the coast, both the Gulf and East Coasts, and we get a drier pocket over the heart of that cold area for the 19th through the 23rd. And not only that, we do get some above average activity in the lakes as we have cold air moving over. Likely going to see some lake effect snowfall, also some clippers moving down, could bring some precipitation, kind of liking that. And then also nearby the Rockies and Plains, we have an above average pocket, while the west stays very, very dry during that time frame. The 8 to 14 day outlook, which will cover the 21st through the 27th, this cold becomes even further east based. So we're seeing very immediate East Coast areas seeing a lot of cold during this time frame. The only warm pocket would be this kind of West Coast area, pretty on par with what we've seen so far this winter. And then for the precipitation, even further suppressed. We see a lot of this drier air even reaching into the Mid-Atlantic, reaching into the Northeast here, and still covering a lot of the Midwest and Ohio Valley. A lot of your precipitation pretty exclusive for the Southeast and Gulf states here. We still have this Rockies and Plains area to watch, though. And similarly to the 6 to 10 day outlook, we have dry conditions prevailing over the West. Now, we've been going over the 3 to 4 week outlook and the monthly outlook for some time now, every single day. I'm sure all of you have seen it. They both look like cold in the east and warm in the west. So yeah, there's that. Let's take a look at the past 10 days. Tomorrow we will be able to do the full 14 day outlook for the first 14 days of January. So we will be able to kind of unlock a lot more of that. But the past 10 days have been very cold, basically from the plains eastward. But when you look at it, we see that a lot of it is the plains into the southeast and mid-Atlantic, primarily with that majority of the cold air. Although a lot of the Great Lakes and Northeast have still had their fair share of cold throughout January as well. The West has primarily been warmer, but we've seen a cooling trend in the West where it's looked less and less warm over time. And we're looking at a lot of days that feature a lot of the West, Central, and East being cold, which is quite uncommon. Usually you see the West being warm and the East being cold, or the West being cold and the East being warm. But we're really seeing a lot of coast-to-coast cold air, which has been many, many years since you could really say that. Let's take a look at the European model. This is by far going to be the less eventful of the two models that we look at today. Yesterday, we saw a massive blizzard on this one. I told you guys, buckle up. It's going to be a roller coaster, just like all of our storms are when we're looking in the medium to long range. And, again, we're going to be tracking these threats. I will point out where the storm is still. This area here is the one that we've been kind of watching, just for fun. It did have some potential to trend northward, as they always do. We didn't see it come together, but it is awfully close compared to what was originally modeled. We have precipitation stretching into some of the deeper south states, and the cold that is cold enough for snow is just maybe 100, 200 miles further to the north. So it got about halfway there on modeling, but just not quite enough. And there wasn't enough time for that trend to fully occur. What we see as we move on towards tomorrow is still prevailing cold air, some snow squalls and snow showers throughout a lot of the Ohio Valley into the Great Lakes, even some lake effect happening up there. Not too much else other than that. By Wednesday, I mean, it's a lot of the same. Hard to really break down because there's not much else going on. I would say the main thing is we do have some developments in the western Gulf of Mexico, and this is where the majority of our storms have originated, and the majority of our upcoming storms are likely to originate from as well. So we'll be watching this pocket. It needs to latch onto the jet stream here, which at this point is moving across some of your deeper south areas. So all us to do is join in with that, and we'd be looking at some snowfall threat. So let's see what happens by Thursday, and that one kind of fizzles off to the south a little bit. So we don't get it to grasp on. You can't hit on all of them, obviously, but we're going to be seeing a frequent storm track over there, so no worries. Thursday the 16th is still quite cold, although we do have warmth moving in from the west, and this is, if you've been watching closely the past few videos, when we're going to start to see finally some warmth moving into the east. For the kind of 16th through 18th time frame, we are watching for some opportunities at warmth. So let's see by Friday, and we really get a lot milder here for a lot of the kind of Midwest, Ohio Valley, Southeast here, much milder than we've been seeing it, and certainly more mild than it's going to be after this time frame. Not a whole lot to discuss as far as storms, except we do have some Rocky Mountain snowfall, and we do have a low between the Great Lakes and Hudson Bay, which, as you know, has been ushering in a lot of our cold. So this could be some foreshadowing of some cold coming in after this point, which, you know, spoiler alert, there's going to be. Let's take a look at the 18th here on Saturday. And things get interesting here. For Saturday, we do see thunderstorms. A lot of thunderstorms, perhaps up the southeast area, even the Gulf states. So we will be watching for some severe weather threats throughout there. Again, this is going to be one of our only mild time frames where we have higher humidity, higher temperatures here in this model run, at least, which will take us through the beginning of February, or at least very close to it. So definitely enjoy it if you do get a dry patch where there isn't any rain occurring and it is quite warm, because it's going to be hard to come by in this pattern overall. We do have snowfall taking over for the Great Lakes and, or not the Great Lakes, the Great Plains and a lot of the Rockies here. The Northeast seeing some mountainous snowfall here by this Saturday time frame. Let's take a look at Sunday here. And what we see by Sunday is that we have what looks to be the ingredients for a system to move along this jet stream, which is basically moving straight through a lot of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. But we get a northern piece of energy here over the plains and Midwest, a southern piece of energy way down here in the Gulf, and we need those to come together to create something really, really big. But they're very far apart on this model guidance. The good news for people that would want snow is that this is still 5-6 days out, and there is time for that to come together, but it's just not looking that way right now on this current model, at least not to its maximum potential. We do get a very weak low off of the Mid-Atlantic, where we do get some plowable snowfall for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but you can only imagine if the pieces of energy fully came together and phased, what this could truly look like. I think this is also an important date, Monday the 20th, because this is when we're seeing this deep diving Arctic air from the Midwest and Great Lakes down towards the deeper South Central states and moving towards the east very, very rapidly here on the 20th. So lots of cold air, a storm moving along the jet stream, and it does start to develop off of New England, bringing some, again, plowable snowfall as this cold air is basically centered over the east by Tuesday. Very, very cold on Tuesday. We also have a clipper system trying to develop here over the northern plains, and this could move down, you know, very far south, could move down further north. These are one of those rare storms that doesn't move really through the jet stream. It moves straight through the cold air. So very common for these to be all snow events. There is no real warm side to the storm, and yeah, pretty interesting type of storm. Typically doesn't bring huge snowfall totals, but again, all snow. Let's take a look at what happens by the time we're entering into Wednesday. Again, very quickly moving through the Great Lakes there with that clipper system into the Northeast. We move towards Thursday, the 23rd. We're still very cold in the east. Kind of the heart of your Arctic air mass is going to be here between the Hudson Bay and Great Lakes. We have a very, very healthy area of warmth here over the west, and this is going to be what we call a positive PNA. That forces a lot of the cold into the east, which we're seeing here. Another thing here on this Thursday 23rd date is we have another pocket of development here for the western Gulf of Mexico, a jet stream that is really diving through this storm, and this one could have an easier time latching onto that jet stream. So let's see what happens As we move this towards Friday, we see that this was our blizzard, basically, and we get this storm kind of way suppressed to the southeast, not even close to bringing snowfall to the coast here. So we've seen this get shoved offshore, and again, it's just too cold. There's too much Arctic air, and there's no room. The jet stream is way too far offshore because we're in the heart of it, basically, by this time frame, at least on the European model. We get a milder push here for the 25th, 26th, 27th in the east, and we're left with that by the 28th here. So perhaps we're seeing an entry into a warmer pattern, at least for this pocket, with colder temperatures primarily over the west and north central states. Or is this just a really far out model getting something wrong? And that's going to be the question that needs to be answered over the coming days. But this type of a pattern would create some intense setups for severe weather, as we're seeing here, across the deeper south, up even into the Appalachian Mountain Range, and some ice storms as well for some of those areas like Arkansas, northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, western Kentucky. Really, really needs to be watched closely. We also have a snowstorm in the southern Rockies here. So we start to see some other areas get activity that have not been seeing quite as much. These areas have seen it, but as far as the southern Rockies, seeing some activity that they have not seen in a while. Again, the GFS model is going to look a lot different here as we move through things. Still different than it showed yesterday, but not too similar to today's European model run. First off, we get this storm developing by Saturday morning across Illinois in this mild pattern, a little bit of a cold front underneath. And again, we'll be watching for severe weather and thunderstorms for Saturday, the 18th here. Into late in that evening, we have some thunderstorms and showers up and down this kind of mid-Atlantic coast, down through the southeast. And these wintertime thunderstorm events do happen, even in these far north areas like the mid-Atlantic. So wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. There's your Hudson Bay, Great Lakes low, and we have snowfall around for a lot of your northeast areas. This cold is on the move eastward for Sunday, the 19th, where we do start to get a low developing along that cold front. Some snowfall for the kind of southern Appalachians into Virginia, DC, Maryland. So that does spread into a bit of the mid-Atlantic as well. As we move overnight, we see that this low is really, really getting organized nearby the mid-Atlantic and northeast. And we're seeing snowfall throughout Virginia, DC, Maryland, the Delmarva, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New England. So again, this is right around when we see a storm kind of like this on the European model, but a little bit more intense on that GFS model run. And then right around the 20th, 21st is when we see the heart of that cold over the east. And right around this time frame is also when we start to see more activity popping up here over the western Gulf of Mexico that could move in with this jet stream and show somewhat of a southeast snowstorm. So let's see what occurs here as we move towards Wednesday. This is 1 a.m. on Wednesday. We see some South Carolina, North Carolina snowfall far suppressed to the southeast. Even my neck of the woods, southeast Virginia, gets a little bit before that storm moves offshore. It's important to note that the GFS model does have a southeast bias, so it is showing the low here. You know, wouldn't be surprised to see a suppressed look, especially since the Euro is showing that as well. But also, this GFS model does sometimes tend to trend further northwest as time goes on, and that would be a little bit more opportunistic for some of these areas like the mid-Atlantic and northern southeast for perhaps a kind of classic southern nor'easter or somewhat of a modified southern slider type storm to move through. So could look somewhat different. We do get a little bit of a threat here as we get towards the 24th. We see some activity building here near the Gulf. And this wants to ride along the jet stream, but the problem here is it just never gets its act together. We get some light snowfall throughout some of these areas, but that's just about it from this one. Moves offshore innocently. Another area of energy here we see kind of pop up from the western Gulf of Mexico, moves almost directly north, meets up with this piece. It's moving along the jet stream already, and then wants to move eastward. So let's see what occurs when we see that happen here. So we move towards Monday, the 27th. Tuesday the 28th, we see a northeast kind of Ohio Valley snowstorm to end things off, and it even recycles. We get a lot of energy down here in the Gulf, and overall a lot of activity along the eastern states as we have cold air pouring in from the west. This could spell a major, more northern and more interior snowfall event for a lot of these areas, so we would need to watch that very, very closely. Let's see what happens when we look at the total precipitation on the Euro, at least, and we get a below average for almost the entire nation. There's no way to really say it otherwise. I mean, I guess we get some moving through the southeast, but I think that's still going to be below average. So let's take a look at it. And yeah, for the majority of areas, we're seeing below average precipitation unless you're in these northern Rockies, northern plains, or slim areas in the southeast. Way below average as far as activity is concerned. The total snowfall in the European model, because we miss out on these coastal systems, they're too far suppressed, is below average for a lot of these areas. We don't get any snow, really. We do see quite a bit throughout the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Northeast. Still not like crazy above average or anything, but probably meeting the average, if not a little bit above with some of that activity. And the Cascades down through the Rockies, we are seeing a surge of activity as well as far as snowfall is concerned. Again, as we zoom into the east here, this looks like interior snowfall area for the east. The Great Lakes getting quite a bit as well, and the Ohio Valley looking decent. But for these more coastal and southeast areas, not a lot to speak of, because when the cold moves in, the storms are too far offshore. It's just like too much of a good thing almost. GFS model, we do have this similar look in the east, a little bit more coastal with it. So we get southern New England, eastern PA, northern New Jersey, and New York City in there. Even northern Virginia and DC. So that kind of corridor in there. And not only that, we do see this kind of coastal Carolina system that is really suppressed pretty far to the southeast, but it's cold enough to produce snowfall. These storms are not impossible, and I can even think of, I think it was 1980 when a system took about that snow track, bringing southern North Carolina and coastal South Carolina some really hefty snowfall totals. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that date or any of the details there, but I'm pretty sure that was like way more than this. That was like 2 feet of snowfall for similar areas to what we're circling here. So it does happen. Not the most common thing in the world though, but I would say if there's a pattern for it, this is the one. Not that that guarantees you anything, but not impossible by any means, and not really far-fetched to think that it could be cold enough for these areas. Again, Rockies doing quite nicely here compared to what they have been. As we zoom into the east, we get some of these amounts. So definitely a plowable snowfall event if this occurred like this along South Carolina, North Carolina, and, really ending before that Virginia border. So definitely I get kind of missing out on that one. We do see that there is a lot of storms moving through this kind of coastal area, bringing West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, northern New Jersey, southern New England, even some of northern New England, some snowfall in there. That would be definitely interesting for you guys and bring about more activity. Let's take a look at the temperature pattern, because again, very, very cold. We get this first blast that's still just kind of ongoing here, and that's going to last from today on the 13th through the 14th, 15th, even a bit of the 16th for the immediate East Coast. But by the 17th, we're warming. We're near normal along the East Coast, and for the upper Midwest, far above normal by this time frame. And then for the 18th, we're dealing with above normal temperatures for most of the East. Even the 19th, we could see a bit of that still left over before we look at the 20th here, which would feature far below average temperatures. This is a full-on polar vortex event here. Somewhere in here would be the heart of it, and it is just blasting cold air around for a lot of these areas. So really, really impactful look here from this European model with this severe cold air. And it's going to spread even further eastward. As we look at the 21st, it's kind of over the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Southeast the most here, with temperatures 25 to 35 or more degrees below normal. This would be on the severe end of the spectrum. 22nd, it's warmed up a little bit. And by warmed up, I mean only 15 to 25 degrees below normal. Not any worse, but we have another pocket of 25 35 degrees below normal that's trying to swing in, so we could get more intense with it again. Let's take a look at the 23rd, and yeah, it's moving in. 24th, again, not quite as severe as that first one, but that doesn't make it not severe. And this lasts all the way till the 26th, 27th before we see a more substantial warm up along the eastern states, which would be very nice, and severe cold air, but this time around for the west and some of those like northern and central plains, which would probably be very severe as well. The GFS model, especially at the end, I want to see if there's agreement, but let's just walk through it together. Cold, cold, cold. We get this brief warm up for the 18th, 19th here, and then we usher in that very, very brutal cold air 21st, 22nd. Similarly to yesterday, it's not quite as cold. We still have the magentas popping up, which would be severely cold. Even these purplish blues are severe cold. The greens are far below normal temperatures, and then the blues are slightly below normal. So you can kind of see that on either model we're going to be on the severe end of this, and I don't think you're going to be able to really feel the difference. You're not going to be like, oh, this isn't as bad as what the European models showed. It's going to be bad in either case. It's just like a 5-10 degree difference, which when we're talking, 40, 50 degrees below normal isn't a huge difference. But we see that move through. And we similarly see another Arctic blast behind it for the 24th, 25th, 26th, but again, a little less intense with it. And then the main difference here from the European model is that we actually continue to see this positive P&A prevailing as we approach the end of January. And it looks like the cold is moving back into the east again. We do get a brief warm-up, but this cold is moving right back into the east still by January 29th. So this model is not showing that potential end to the cold at like the European model is showing. And I'm curious to see if the end of January will be the end of this brutally cold pattern like the European model shows, or if it's just kind of a long range blunder by that model and we're going to continue to see a very cold pattern well into February. Big question marks, big implications. If you want to know more as we move forward and figure out more stuff, be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.